we're finally tackling some more Alpha Course. And this one is a hoot, too. It's about how new converts can make the most of the rest of their lives. Well, sort of. You'll see. This is a downright weird episode, and I hope I can do it justice. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. This is Roll to Disbelieve, and I'm Captain Cassidy. Thank you for joining me. In so many ways, Alpha Course is a relic of Nicky Gumbel's favorite years as a Christian, the 1990s. Nicky Gumbel, of course, is the leader of Alpha Course. He's the one who took it from just a little onboarding class for new Christians, new converts to his church in England, to an evangelism-focused one that, ideally at least, fits into any flavor of Christianity. As we talk, just keep that in mind. Nicky Gumbel and Alpha Course are the products of evangelical fads like purity culture and that whole fundamentalist charismatic takeover of evangelicalism. So y'all can probably guess that I thought it was funny as hell that Gumbel actually compares people who have premarital sex to pieces of tape that have been stuck to so many things that they have lost their stickiness. That's a real nice way to talk about it, isn't it? This really reminds me of the abstinence-only lectures that you used to get in public schools in America. Those kind of comparisons were everywhere back then, but it really feels out of place in Alpha Course. It's like the entire evangelism machine just ground to a halt because Nicky over here thought it was important to stress that a meaningful life can't have unapproved nookie. Oh, no. It's like this guy has completely forgotten that the whole Jesus People movement that birthed his entire end of Christianity was largely sparked by a mostly gay hippie drug addict who just happened to be wildly charismatic and persuasive on a personal level. Yeah, I'm talking about Lonnie Frisbee. It was because of him that there was a huge Jesus People movement at the end of the 1960s, beginning of the 1970s. But he kept sneaking away from his handlers to have unapproved sex, most of it with other men. But I do think you would be hard-pressed to say that he didn't think his life was meaningful despite that. But don't you worry, even though Nicky Gumbel has forgotten all about this, Pepperidge Farms remembers. Before we get going on today's topic, I would also like to thank my patrons and supporters. You make my work possible, and I am so appreciative. Thank you. If you'd like to become one of them, I welcome you as well. Please check out the links at the end of today's write-up for options. The write-up will either be on patreon.com at Roll to Disbelieve, one word, or over at our official site, rolltodisbelieve.com. Thank you for whatever you decide to do. And now, our situation report. Alpha Course finally gets around to the fun stuff. It's been a few months since we last talked about Alpha Course, but we are back in the saddle with number 12. This one is clearly meant to be shown after the big Spirit Weekend, because it is finally getting down to telling viewers how to make the most of the rest of their lives. Oh, and a quick note about numbering. This is the 11th video that we've seen, but it's numbered number 12. The Spirit Weekend videos throw off the numbering a little bit. What you're really looking for is the title. The title is what matters, not the number. In the 1990s, this was actually number 15, and it was the last video in the series. Lots has changed. And if you're wondering what Spirit Weekend is, it's the big Alpha Course event. The entire course is building up to this big weekend. All over the world, people congregate at these events. They are huge. It's a key part of the conversion process. It is where they lay the evangelism down thickest. This is the weekend where, ideally, the attendees will speak in tongues and become fully converted. So here is what happens in the video. After stressing that we only get one life on Earth, our usual hosts, Toby and Emmy, return. They tell us that they're going to show us how to live meaningfully. Nikki shows up to advise us that we need to make our lives living sacrifices to Yahweh. It's from a Bible verse. To do this, we have to conform not to that icky secular world, but to Christianity. At the same time, though, we also have to be authentic. Toby tells us that he thinks Jesus is the most authentic human who ever lived, as well as the most integrated. I don't think so. If you read the Gospels, Jesus comes off like an absolute whack job, as well as really mean. We've already introduced Nicky Gumbel, the main public face and leader of Alpha Group. He tries to cold read us, and so do Toby and Gemma, because cold reading is a thing in this episode. Nikki guesses that we're watching Alpha because we secretly want that weird Jesus aura quality that Christians have, that they're just so, I don't know, different, I guess. However, we are just terrified of change. Nikki tells us not to worry, because Jesus will never take good things out of our lives. He only takes the bad things. And that leads us into a huge section about unapproved sex. Nikki and the other hosts use a lot of purity culture, abstinence-only language to make unapproved sex sound degrading and harmful to everybody involved. Of course, it doesn't have to be. Nor do I think Nikki's claim is plausible at all about how much better Christian-approved marriages are than those gross, secular ones. If you've been reading me for any amount of time, you know about my horrific first marriage to a true Christian. Yeah. And the catastrophic fireworks that went off when I decided to dump him and flee. But Nikki tops himself. Right after this, he makes the astonishing claim that Paul, as in the guy who wrote all those letters in the back end of the New Testament, Paul, he says that Paul never condemns people for not listening to Yahweh. Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute, don't you worry. Around midway through, Emmy and Toby show up to talk about living sacrifices again. They explain that the phrase means giving Jesus their time and energy. And that means conducting private religious devotions, yes, but also attending church and being kind to other people. Along the way, we meet two people who claim their pre-conversion lives were just awful. After conversion, they are so much happier and they're living meaningful lives. One of the two is an ex-convict who converted in prison, but then he devoted his life to prison ministry. The other used to run a nightclub in New York City, but now he operates a charity. It's focused on helping people get clean water in impoverished countries. The people in the watch party, we liked that guy, actually. It really sounded amazing. This guy was doing something tangible to help people. But I'll tell you this, that guy has clearly dealt with a lot of condemnation from Christians for not evangelizing the people that his charity helps. He is steadfast in refusing to listen to them, too. Now let's talk about their actual suggestions for living a meaningful life, as far as I can tell. I had to add that as far as I can tell, though, because this is a really meandering episode. Like it's hard to tell if they're still trying to convert people, or if they think they've nailed the sale and they can sort of relax and start talking about how to live like a Christian. And here are their suggestions. First, absolutely no off-limits sex. Second, obey the rules of your chosen flavor of Christianity. Third, but be authentic and integrated too. Fourth, don't skip church or religious devotions. 5, be kind to other people. 6, make sure Jesus likes whatever it is you're doing for a living. And 7th, proudly tell people about your religious devotions. In particular, Nikki wants people to be very proud about the fact that they have attended an Alpha Course weekend. He doesn't want them to try to hide that. I wonder why. Now, overall, this isn't an absolutely terrible list of guidelines. It's not that different from any other kind of similar list you would get from Christians. But I do wonder why Alpha Course felt they needed to say any of it. I mean, a real live God inhabits their intended audience, right? He crawls inside your head and possesses you when you convert. Shouldn't this God be able to tell his followers what he wants them to do? Is he really this bad at communication? And is any of this list really hard to piece together on one's own? I would say, no, it's not. But it gets worse. Even if Christians follow this list to the letter, many of them still feel like their lives are meaningless. What should we make of the millions of Christians going through those emotions? Because in my own experience, I have met way more Christians like that than I've ever met who were thrilled to greet every new morning, just living the dream. As for authenticity, the more zealous the Christians, the less authentic they seem. They really remind me of the people of that dystopian YouTube series, Autodale. In his series, the adults wear masks to hide their real selves, lest the tribe tear them apart for wrongthink. Because the thing is, authenticity is impossible in modern evangelicalism. Might be easier for the other flavors of Christianity, mainline, the progressive flavors. Leaders make fewer demands for obedience and conformity in them, and they're not quite as married to a dysfunctional authoritarian model that viciously attacks those who don't submit and conform. But evangelical converts figure out pretty quickly that they can't talk about some things with their new church community. All that said, my main observations on this episode were on the weird parts of it. They didn't dwell on the actual topic of meaningful living very much at all. When we finished the video, I was like, did they ever actually tell us? And none of us really thought they had. I had to listen to the episode a second time to get this. The first really weird thing is Paul the Apostle. Without question, Nikki's claim about Paul blew my mind the hardest. I exploded when I heard it. Nikki claims around 10 minutes in that Paul never condemns anyone. Has Nikki Gumbel read any of the letters attributed to Paul? Or does he assume that the audience never has and never will? Because either way, dude is wrong. Here's the beginning of Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 1, verses 6 through 7. Quote, I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you to live in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel, which is really no gospel at all. Evidently, some people are throwing you into confusion and are trying to pervert the gospel of Christ. Unquote. That sounds pretty condemning to me. Dude is seething. Here's another one, 1 Corinthians 5, 1 through 3. Quote, it is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that is intolerable even among pagans. A man has his father's wife, and you are proud. Shouldn't you rather have been stricken with grief and have removed from your fellowship the man who did this? Although I am absent from you in body, I am present with you in spirit, and I have already pronounced judgment on the one who did this, just as if I were present. Unquote. A couple verses later, he tells his audience to hand this man over to Satan. What are we supposed to make of that? Is he really avoiding condemnation? Doesn't seem that way to me. I could also name check 1 Corinthians 3, which opens with Paul accusing his audience of being worldly infants because they kept arguing among themselves and trying to one-up each other. Or better yet, 1 Corinthians 4:21, where Paul gently suggests beating his arrogant readers, that's the word he uses, arrogant, with a rod to correct their misbehavior. And I doubt very many evangelical women are unfamiliar with Paul's demands for the subjugation of our entire sex to men. He made demands of women about clothing, grooming, behavior that just aren't applied to men, ever, in modern evangelicalism. Whether these verses are taken out of context or not, and they probably are, evangelical leaders can and do use them to rationalize the mistreatment of women. So, in a very real sense, Nikki has rewritten the Apostle Paul to be more palatable in the modern age. I shouldn't be shocked anymore by those rewriting efforts, but apparently there's still a bit of shockability left in me. I've still got some, because this was egregious. The other weird thing I want to talk about is cold reading. Because for such a short video, again 28 minutes long, cold reading pops up an uncomfortable number of times. Cold reading, of course, is a form of manipulation. One person picks up subtle cues from another to make educated guesses about them. But the target doesn't know how the first person got that information. They think that some supernatural agent somehow provided it. When it's used by unscrupulous people, cold reading can bolster the credibility of the person doing it. And they can get really good at it too, because most of us give off cues all the time. They radiate from us like auras, head to toe. That show Sherlock has its hero making liberal use of those clues. But what we have here is less about cold reading and more about wild guesses. Nikki, Toby, and Gemma, the hosts, they can't see us. They don't know anything about us beyond that we are watching their video. By the way, we are blessed Squeaky joined us. So semi-educated wild guesses are what they're left with. They have to think about the kind of people who would choose to watch an Alpha Course video. So first, at about 5 minutes in, Nikki assumes that those watching totally want that weird Jesus aura that Christians have. Quote, "Perhaps you came to Alpha because you saw a change in a friend or a family member. Something about their life seemed attractive, and you wanted to find out why. But at the same time you think, not sure I want to become like that." Unquote. In itself, this isn't a bad guess about the average Alpha Weekend attendee. I'm willing to bet that most people attend those retreats because another Alpha graduate invited them. But that is not a supernaturally gained insight. At 12 minutes, we get more cold reading, this time from Toby and Gemma. Toby says, quote, "I don't know if you might have prayed after the last session when there was that opportunity to ask God to fill us with the Holy Spirit. If you did, you may have had an amazing experience of God. Maybe you felt deeply moved as the Holy Spirit touched your heart in a profound way. Maybe you actually found it quite overwhelming." Gemma is quick to add, quote, "Or perhaps you feel a bit disappointed. You might say, well, I was hoping I would have this amazing experience. But to be honest, I don't think I felt much at all." Unquote. Toby ends with, "Maybe you're just thinking I found it really difficult. Maybe you're thinking I didn't find it easy at all. Maybe you felt like running away." Unquote. So they accidentally let on that there is no steady, reliable effect on people after they go through Spirit Weekend. And that would be because the effects are completely subjective. Nobody is making contact with anything supernatural here, so the presenters have to provide the full range of possible reactions to Spirit Weekend. How that key weekend is going to hit someone depends massively on their personality, expectations, and goals. In similar fashion, meaningful living itself is pretty subjective. There is no overarching meaning given to humans by any gods, so we have to figure it out as best we can for ourselves. As a result, what's meaningful to me might not be meaningful at all to you, and vice versa. For example, I don't think I would have found life meaningful as a parent, but I also know parents who can't imagine life having meaning outside of their children. I find life very meaningful as a writer and an armchair religion analyst, but I'm sure not everyone would find it equally so. As far as I can tell, this is how you live a meaningful life, no matter what religion you might be. Work out what's really important to you. Develop realistic goals based on those things. Do things conducive to the goals. Avoid doing things that work against those goals. And be ready to start at number 1 again and again throughout your lifetime. Priorities can, and often do, change. So if you decide that what's important to you is lessening the suffering of animals, well, figure out what that means to you. Figure out how you can realistically impact the situation. Then go forth and conquer. It might mean becoming a vegan, or donating money and time to animal shelters, or working to destroy animal abuse rings online, or fostering baby animals, or becoming a park ranger, etc. The results of that brainstorming might not look meaningful to everybody on Earth, and that's okay. Whatever the results are, they'll contribute to you living a life that you can look back on with happiness and pride, and as little regret as possible. What I'm describing might sound a little simplistic, and yeah, fair cop, it is. But nobody told me this when I was younger, and I really wish someone had. Instead, I wasted my time praying, trying to get my life's meaning handed to me on a silver platter. But no gods wanted to do that. In fact, they weren't doing it for any of my Christian friends. They were as mystified as I was about what they were supposed to do with their lives. So I had to work it out for myself. Here's the kicker, too. Here's the awesome part. Every human on Earth has had to do this. Whatever they come up with, they might dress it up as divine. They might say that a god said it to them. But in reality, they worked it out just like everybody else. So had I gotten divine marching orders, I still would have been the one behind them. It just would have been nice if I'd known in advance that that was what was going to happen, that I was going to have to sit down and work it out. In the end, though, it got done. That's what's important. The answers that we find for ourselves have always mattered more anyway. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you liked that. Next up, oh my goodness, a Southern Baptist finally gave us what we've been asking for all along. Support for all his supernatural claims. Oh, I can't wait to see what he has found. We're going to explore that next time. Until then, this is Captain Cassidy signing off. Hope you all have a great midweek, and we'll see you soon.